Excellent. I would like to call to order this regularly scheduled meeting of the Ulysses Town Board. It is June 28th, 2022, and it is 7 o'clock or 7:01, close to there, 7:01. And I would like to ask for a roll call, please.
Mr. Boggs,
Present?
Ms. Bouchard,
Present.
Ms. Olson,
Present.
Mr. Goldman,
Present.
Ms. Marino, here,
Excellent, thank you.
perfect board attendance.
So we have the meeting agenda in front of you. I would like to pull item 7A. The highway superintendent requested we postpone this one again, so he can be present for it. So postpone to the 12th of July. Were there any other additions or alterations that anybody needs?
I would like to add the, I don't know if it's possible to do in this meeting, but, you know, we need a chair for the CSAC committee, and could we talk about that?
Sure. Let's add that as item, but it'll become item E. Is that okay?
Yeah,
under new
that's
business?
fine. Mhm.
With those changes, is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved. Second?
All those in favor? Aye. Excellent. We will now move on to privilege of the floor. If there are members of the public who are interested either in person or remotely to address us. If you are attending in person, it would be awesome if you could come up here. That way people can see you. Let me grab a chair. You're welcome to stand
Or they
or
could just,
What is?
the only challenge is
Oh,
the
that doesn't-
speaker.
oh,
but
that-
We can move the speaker.
That microphone doesn't.
Well, we'll just move this one during privilege of the floor. Let's see. Does this look too much like someone is hovering over Mary? Okay, if you are in person, please join us up here. Is there anybody in the public who wishes to address the board? We have 3 minutes per person. Please join us.
I was talking, so I missed where I was supposed to go.
Right here, right on here.
My name is Marlene Darfler. I live at 18 El Dorado Drive in the village. And I'm speaking once again in support of the flag policy to hopefully be voted on at this June 28th meeting. As I mentioned last month, it's inexcusable that this issue has been in front of the board for 4 years without a vote. A year ago in July, the town board did due diligence with research and approved a DEI policy. The town DEI policy states, quote, "We value diversity, reject racism, bigotry, and discrimination." As a resident of the town of Ulysses, I expect a commitment to DEI, not only in words, but in action. The POW MIA, LGBTQ+ pride flag, Black History flag, the suffrage flag, and other properly recognized flags should be displayed at the Ulysses Town Hall as they have been in the village of Trumansburg and surrounding municipalities. The time for talking about this is over. Action needs to be taken. It's important for board members to grapple with and understand the difference between representing a special interest group and recognizing and dealing with the history of inequity. Special interests are special interests, not the results of hundreds of years of institutionalized discrimination. Placing them as equal entities is a tactic used to support the status quo, keeping power where it's always been. As an example, flying the LGBTQ flag is not giving special attention to a special interest group, but not flying it is, however, a form of discrimination that contradicts your current DEI policy. I ask you all this evening to give true thought to your commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion and pass this flag policy. This was my prepared statement before Friday. And I feel like I just need to say off the cuff, and I hope this comes across clearly. I think everyone was expecting what happened with the Supreme Court Friday, but it's been a gut punch. And it's no secret that this court would like to go after marriage equality, voting rights, birth control, We're getting books banned in libraries. It's a very frightening time. And I think we need the bare minimum to fly a flag, to make someone feel seen and heard and supported in this town. If that minimum cannot be reached, then we need to throw out the DEI policy. I just feel at this point, it's scary out there. And we look to you as our elected officials to say, you belong here, and we will make sure of that, and we will fly a flag for you. Thank you.
Thank you. 11 seconds to spare. Well done. Okay. Is there, I don't think, do we have anybody who's, I like to go back and forth in person or remote. Is there anybody in the public online who wishes to address the board? I'm not seeing anybody, but if that changes, I will come back and check. Is there anybody else in the public here who wishes to address us? Please join us.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Menino. I live at 124 Tamarack Lane. And I support the flag policy draft. And I really thank everyone. Thank you, Roxanne, saying you'd support it. Caitlin, I know that others are thinking about it, and I hope that you continue to think about it seriously and pass it. I echo everything that Marlene said. I think it's really important. And the distinction is this is not about a special interest group. This is about human beings and equity. And so anyway, and I do appreciate the DEI policy. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Okay. Is there anyone else who wishes to address us? Please come ahead.
Thank you, Ann Corman, 4348 Swamp College Road. I also do appreciate folks who have on the board have spoken out and said they're already going to support the what's before you as far as your flag policy. I appreciate that you allowed me to speak twice last time about it. The only thing I wanted to say tonight was we're nearing the end of Gay Pride Month. So if you do pass this, I hope you would figure out some way to fly the flag for at least a full month. It doesn't have to be even just a month, but it could be longer, and it doesn't have to be just in June. So just thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody online? I know there's one phone number online, which I'm not sure who it belongs to. So I just wanted to make sure that individual had an opportunity to address us if so desired. Okay. Well, there will be a second opportunity to address us at the end of the meeting. Okay, so let's move on. I'm very pleased to welcome Ethan Crampton from the Rural Youth Services Program, who has been running just a truly transformational program for middle school students, which I think everybody knows is a very difficult age for a lot of us. It's not a time I personally would care to return to. So I'm grateful for Ethan. And so Ethan, I will turn it over to you.
Well, I certainly don't return to it myself. And we try to make middle school as fun as possible. I'm going to share my screen. It's just going to be a really quick presentation.
If you're in the audience and want to move to a new spot that's more convenient, please feel free to.
And just make sure you guys can still hear me.
Yeah.
All right, great. So my name is Ethan Crampton. I'm the program manager for Cornell Cooperative Extension, Tompkins County, Rural Youth Services, Trumansburg Ulysses Youth Services. It's the longest name, and that the long name reflects how much fun we have. We run programs for 5th through 8th grade, and also in the high school, so from 9th grade to 12th grade. We run positive youth development programs, anything from out in the woods hiking, to fishing, to cooking, to programs like cardboard boat building. We do a ton of stuff. And I'm gonna just click. Let's see, here we go. So all of our programs are based on the positive youth development model. And so when we go into program, we really believe that all youth have a special skills and resources which can be developed, nurtured, and cultivated. The biggest thing for me when I go and run programs is to make them fun, safe, and build a community amongst kids who often aren't friends to begin with. We base everything that we do off of the 5 C's of positive youth development, which are competence, confidence, connection, character, and caring. And if you just think of those words and think about how each word can lead to a more well-rounded life and a feeling of acceptance and safety, that's what our programs strive to do. So you see some pictures of, we've got on the right, some middle schoolers cooking. These are 5th and 6th graders. And one of these kids is giving me a face where he said he's pretending to have fun, but they always actually have fun too. Here we're making scones, and there's an 8th grader and 2 5th graders there. So we like to get a mixing of youth. In the middle picture, we've got high school students at a presentation by the Johnson Art Museum about art and identity. So we run programs often for 6 to 8 weeks, but we also run one-day special events where we like to link students with the resources around town, whether that's the Science Center, Cornell University, Ithaca College, any of the amazing other institutions that we have in this town. We really like to connect youth with things beyond just the borders of Trumansburg. We seek to have students feel really confident in anything that they do. In the top middle picture, you see a youth who caught a huge stick during fishing program. This was by far the biggest stick I've ever seen pulled out of the lake on a fishing pole. I don't know how he did it, but he's just as proud as the student on the left who just almost caught a huge bass, which jumped in the air and flew his lure out of its mouth. So it's these things where we work within the program as a microcosm for life. You know, we try to take fun experiences and then build community and essentially the 5 C's around what we do. And what we get is programs that aren't just taking care of kids after school. We get programs that kids learn specific skills, can apply to their lives, but then also apply latent skills like patience for fishing or teamwork for building a fire and gathering wood. So we do everything with intention, with the belief that every kid is going to do awesome at whatever we do as long as we set them up for success. COVID has been very interesting. I know I'm virtual right now, but please, everybody know our whole agency has been running programs since late April or early May, right when the weather got a little bit nice in person. So that's since 2020. So we kind of took a break for a few weeks and realized that it seemed safer outdoors. And so we started running all of our programs outdoors, and now we've moved inside, as you can see. I'm gonna click right here. I just wanna do a special thanks publicly to the Church of the Epiphany. They housed our programs during COVID this past year. We found that the more isolated you can run programs, the less disrupted they are. So if school was canceled, but none of my students had COVID, we still could run program. Whereas where we used to run programs right out of school, if school were canceled, we'd have to cancel programs as well. So we're just trying to bring consistency to programming in a world with not much consistency. And the Church of the Epiphany played a pivotal role in doing that. And we truly can't thank them enough. And they charge no money. And we always cleaned up really well, but sometimes I looked at the room after COVID or after program and was like, oh my gosh, how are we gonna get this back to church ready before Sunday? So really though, we're just so grateful for these community institutions which have stepped up and really thought about the kids and provided a sanctuary. Let's see, in the summer, so just quickly, in the school year, I mainly run middle school programming. So that is like the outdoor programming, the cooking programming, the mentorship programs. And then in the summer, I run a few middle school programs, but then we focus on the youth employment program. The town of Ulysses, we thank you very much. You guys take a piece of property taxes and put money towards the youth employment program, which is fantastic. This past year, we actually got a nice bump of funds, which gets us back to pre-COVID funding, which is fantastic. Just last week, I had 13 students in the courtroom doing training, taking their federal civil rights and sexual harassment training and filling out all the paperwork. So for this year, we have 13 students placed at different businesses and organizations throughout the town. And that is a result of your supporting the youth. So I just want to say thank you for that. Does anybody have any questions? I know I just ran right through it, but I know you guys are busy and it gets late fast.
I have a question, Ethan. How many years have you been doing this, and what changes have you seen in terms of challenges of doing programming, COVID aside?
Yeah.
Or, what has evolved in the course of your experience with the town?
Absolutely. So the first thing is I've been here, this I think is my 6th year, going on almost my 7th. I now joke I am officially a lifer. I love it. Until I feel like I'm getting old, I'm going to keep doing this. The biggest thing, so with COVID, I think there's been a few things that we've seen. The first is a decrease in numbers that we're now building back up, whether that was just it being harder to recruit kids because everything was online, or families being less comfortable with students doing things while school wasn't going on. And so that's been something that we've been working on. We've had years, we've had almost 200 youth participate, individual youth, and we average around a little bit over 100. And for the past few years, we've seen a little bit less. But I think that is purely just due to COVID and safety and things closing and people being sick. Another big one with COVID was just attendance rates, with how many kids were sick at certain times. Was just like, I've been an educator for over a decade, and I've never seen anything like that in terms of just percentages of people out of school and not coming to program. In terms of working with the town, it's been fantastic. I think the more I've been here, the more nestled I've become within the fabric of the community, and I've just felt nothing but welcomed and supported. The Church of the Epiphany is a great example of the support that we've received. We truly reached out to them, and they said, "Come on over, check it out." And before we knew it, Tom Whitmore and I were going through the church and got everything ready, and it was amazing. So, or Tom Whitlow, sorry, which was amazing. Let's see, what else? The other huge one that I've seen is the kind of effects that you wouldn't think about with COVID. So we run a youth employment program, and every year before COVID, I've hired a fair amount of 9th graders. So, and oftentimes the grade level or age of the youth gives them precedent in the program. So if we have an older youth, they'll receive a job placement. And this year I placed one 9th grader because there were so many older students who had yet to have a job. And it's as if those 2 years of employment time in their lives, that year when you're 15, 16, going out for jobs, there were some youth that, parents were like, "No way, we don't want you working out," or just like places weren't hiring during COVID. And so there was a lot, especially kids who might be going to school or something and then coming to a small workplace. So we've seen the age of students in this program go up by 1 or 2 years, which is a huge amount when you're talking the spread is around 4 years. And that will last for years to come, because the 9th graders that didn't get a job this year will then get a job next year as 10th graders. And so it's kind of pushed back the age of the job program a full year, sometimes even 2. So that's been something that I noticed and had not thought about.
That's really good to know. Yeah, absolutely. Go right ahead.
Ethan, who can join? I mean, who
Ah.
is this?
Yeah, so any youth who lives in the town of Ulysses and Village of Trumansburg can join. We are all about no barriers to programs. So programs are free and transportation is also provided. So if you have a student who has parents who can't afford any other programs, like some programs in town cost money, even though we do have great scholarship availabilities, but these are totally free. And then parents can just email me and ask for a ride home, whether that's in our company van or in my car. And so we encourage and really, not to use the word target, but we love when students with less than average opportunity reach out, because that's kind of where our programs really can provide.
And that's the same employment program? That's
Yep.
the
So
same-
youth employment, the cut is it's 14 years. So right when you can get your working papers, you can apply for the youth employment program. The applications are released in late spring, so around like late March, early April. Interviews happen in May. Placements, then you get placed at a local business if you are selected, and then you work for the summer based on an allotted amount of hours that you've been funded for.
And the
So it-
place you put them pays for it, not you, right? Their salaries paid for.
No,
They-
okay.
They're actually employees of the town of Ulysses, so they're project assistants. And so their salaries are, so this year, the 13 students have 118 hours of subsidized employment. And which is fantastic. And placements include Taganic Park, they include the town of Ulysses, they include T-Burg Rec, and they include, so a lot of like state and local agencies, we place students. They also include local businesses like Trumansburg Redemption, Ithaca Vintage. So we have some local farms. So I try to make them jobs that usually a youth wouldn't get, like getting a job at a CSA is pretty competitive. And so I try to place them at pretty interesting spots that look great on a resume and can set them up for success. At the library is another great place where we place 2 students. And lastly, speaking of the library, I just want to touch on the T-Burg Harvest program that's going to be running. That's a free kids farmers market that's going to be based at the library starting Thursday, July 21st, I'm pretty sure. Let me just check that. But that is for all youth in Ulysses can come and pick out free vegetables, which is fantastic. And that's at the library starting, yes, Thursday, July 21st. So if you have youth and like vegetables or don't, please come and grab a basket. It's really a special time, and there's lots of activities that go on. I run that program. There's 2 youth employees that work there, and then there's middle school volunteers, and so it's all youth run, and then it's the kids who go through the market and pick out the free vegetables. So it's something that just started last year, was a huge success, and we're excited to bring it back to the community, but closer to town. Last year it was at the fairground.
Awesome. Does anybody else have any other questions?
So you're CCE Tompkins, but you're dedicated to us?
Yes, so I am part of the Rural Youth Services municipal family in a way. There's one of me in each municipality, as well as the donut around Ithaca, which is the town of Ithaca. The city of Ithaca has their own program. So for each municipality, there is a program manager, and programs are specific to each community, but are based, as I said, in the fundamentals of positive youth development. And we all work under Shelley Lester, who might be here, but she is our supervisor at Cornell Cooperative Extension. So I am a contracted employee by the town of Ulysses. It's taken me 6 years to understand my
Awesome, thank you.
So Michael, I have this job for 10 years.
I was gonna say, you want to see how it's changed? Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And she turned out okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm excited to become town clerk in a few years,
Yeah, there you go.
following Chris's footsteps.
I heard a question pop up about who pays, and so this is a very cooperative model, that there is funding from Tompkins County, there's funding from the town of Ulysses, there's funding from the village of Trumansburg. And then just this week, we received word that Ethan's program and our rec program received United Way funding. So and Ethan's program and the rec program are also collectively overseen by the Trumansburg Ulysses Youth Commission, which is jointly shared between the village and the town, and also has representatives from the school district. So it's truly a financial and municipal team effort to keep it going. And yeah, it's a really excellent program. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's great to have you in front of us, and we really appreciate what you're doing. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. This is my first time presenting to the town, and in my years, I've done it to many other spots, but not this. So I really appreciate it. Next time I'm coming back with a group of kids in person, and we'll have something exciting for you. But again, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your support. It's a pleasure being an educator in Trumansburg. I really feel like you guys care for the kids, and that makes such a difference in my job and in their lives. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Have a
Thanks,
wonderful
Ethan.
evening. Maybe you could bring us scones next time. That would not be.
Ooh, actually, the kids did not like the scones. They liked everything we made except for the scones. They're like, that is not sweet enough.
Scones are also one of those tricky baking things. They are not as easy to make as one would think looking at the recipe. So
Well, thank you again.
thank you, Ethan. Okay, excellent. Okay, let us move on to our flag policy. There was a revised draft provided. If you have a printed copy, everything in red is an alteration. It was posted on Friday. It hasn't been revised since then.
The way you handled me is new, because it doesn't have any graphs. You're gonna let the resolution.
No, I'm talking about the flag policy. This one. There you go. The flag, yep. And so we can go through that, but I would like to, I'd like to move the resolution, then we can go into a second, and then we can go into discussion. But I would like to actually take a moment to read the resolution. Whereas the town of Ulysses is committed to diversity, it should say equity, not equality, and inclusivity, and implementing policies and actions that conform to our 2021 diversity, equity, and inclusion policy. And whereas the town of Ulysses recognizes our collective imperfect local, state, and national history in treating everyone with civility and respect. And whereas the town board has received many requests from the public to fly or display flags for designated days or months of celebration and recognition, and significant public feedback in favor of adopting a flag policy, as our many county and regional municipal neighbors have already done. And whereas the town board is committed to adopting fair, respectful policies that contribute to a more fair and just civil society. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the town of Ulysses adopts the proposed flag policy to be implemented by the town supervisor. We'll do a second, and then we can go into discussion. Is there a second? Thank you. Okay, further comment. The one question I had, which I appreciate Legislator Corman bringing this up, we have June designated for the Pride flag. The Juneteenth flag would also be in June. And that could be challenging from managing two flags on our signage. That's not that we couldn't come up with a way to do that. We could have two brackets. But my question was, by designating the months on there, are we limiting the months that we could actually fly them to? Legislator Corman's point, a member of the public could request that we fly the flag on a different month. The policy is written as such that it would allow us to fly each flag for up to a month in a calendar year. But I wanted to raise that as a question because that's not something I had thought of until your comment. So thank you.
Great. I changed that wording a little bit when I made this edit. When it had originally said these flags and for the months indicated. And so I took out the for the months indicated, and I just left in the month that it was, related to in terms of these special observances. But later down, it says we can pick other months too. So I don't think that it limits it, but that was my thinking when I tried to deal with that, actually.
Any other thoughts on that? I mean, in theory, we can strike the months that are specified. I think it's actually useful for intellectual or for institutional knowledge to know when it's typically done. But if I that was my reading because it does, but I wanted to raise that.
And doesn't every community gonna have the same problem with the two flags in 1 month?
Well, I mean, not every community has a 8-foot
Yeah.
ridiculously short pole, so we can't even fly it on our
There's
flagpole.
2 at the village.
Right. No, they do.
But they
just
do.
have another bracket.
Right.
for the 2 flags.
Yes, no, it's definitely possible. It might be result in one flag facing this direction and one flag facing this direction because of the nature actually of the structure of
Right.
where we can put the brackets. So if people are okay with that, I'm perfectly fine with that, but I just wanted to make, everybody aware that that was,
I think it's okay. It's as written that we have to leeway
Yeah.
to do it a different month. It just sort of indicates the month that,
Right.
like, that it's known to be observed. I had a couple things that I thought about. I didn't get until this afternoon, when Carissa sent the comments that had been mailed in, and so Ms. Rose sent some detailed comments, which I thought were useful. Anyway, but I hadn't had those when I was trying to make these other edits that took into account other comments that we had, which are in red. And so one of them was that I wondered if under 4, where the locations of the flags may be displayed, we might want to add a C that says no flags other than the United States of America and the New York State flags will be displayed in the town hall courtroom. She made a point about the flags inside in the courtroom and that it should really only be governmental flags because, this is a court and everything. So, I mean, I don't.
Flags in the park?
There's one right there.
And we have that one right
And
there.
that
Oh,
one.
right.
So I don't know. I mean, that just clarifies that no other flags would go in here. So that's one suggested thing to think about. And then I wondered, because she had brought up flag sizes, and in the county flag policy, they specify sizes. So we could add a number like 7 or something that says the US flag will be no smaller than 3 feet by 5 feet. Standard flag size and shall be kept in good condition. She raised the issue of the flag being very ratty and that wasn't appropriate and that we should.
Who's this? Who raised this?
Ms. Rose.
Vivian Rose, she
Vivian
came.
Rose, she wrote in
last
a whole bunch of comments that I got this afternoon.
Well, it is true. In February and March, the weather's gonna really deteriorate the flags over time.
they're not particularly expensive, so I'm
Right.
not terribly concerned, but
So
You
I
should
guess,
probably buy a couple.
I was suggesting.
Or you
that
could wait until it wears out.
We
or
could
gets
add a number
tattered.
7 as per her comments that said the US flag shall be no smaller than 3 feet by 5 feet, standard flag size in parentheses, and shall be kept in good condition and retired appropriately when replacement was needed. So there's that to think about. And then the other thing which she raised, and if you looked at the comments I had for the rationale for the things I tried to make the edits to, on number 8, I don't know if when I tried to make these notes to change the number, but when it says only flags recognized by the United States through an act of Congress, presidential proclamation, executive order, and then or flags recognized in relation to a national observance by the United States through an act of Congress. So first of all, I think we could take out presidential proclamation and executive order in the beginning of the sentence because it repeats again at the end. And then she brought up that there are tons of proclamations made that for observances for things, but she linked the same thing that I had linked in my comments to the board, where there's, there's a list that's much smaller of special observances that are recognized by the government and in the national. It's listed in the National Archives government section website, and that's basically the things we have here, like the Pride flag, the month of June, the Black History Month, the Women's History Month, suffrage. And so we could just change that wording to say flags recognized in relation to a national special emphasis observance by the United States through, and the way that they're done is that same way, Congress, presidential proclamation, or executive order. So that, I mean, this is limited by our list and it has to be amended if we want to change it, but it also really, I think, further perhaps addresses the concern that any crazy proclaimed thing could be requested at some point as a flag.
Well,
So
we
those
can't
are-
stop people from requesting, but it
No,
will
no,
take
but
three
I mean,
votes.
that they
and-
don't
yeah.
meet our policy without amendment and this, and it further, I think it further shows our thinking and narrow justification to try to keep the things that are really specially recognized for, you know, for a cultural or heritage reason. So I guess I'm suggesting that modify that to read only flags recognized by the United States through an act of Congress. Oh, no, only, yeah. I don't know. Maybe I don't know.
Are you talking about number 7?
Yeah,
So if you just delete that phrase, recognized by the United States through an act of Congress.
right.
So
So maybe just say only flags recognized,
in relation
In
to a
relation
national
to-
observance.
right?
Well,
Or
the Six
through an
Nations-
act of Congress or in relation to it, because another, like the POW and YA flag might be.
Well, where did we
by
come
an
up
act
with
of
these
Congress.
6?
Well, they were the ones that we took off of the
County.
county flag policy, and then Caitlin looked at a couple of other municipal
these-
So,
policies.
so then added Juneteenth and the
I just
Haudenosaunee.
suggested adding Juneteenth.
And we
Oh.
talked about adding the Six Nations to the
Yeah.
The Six
actual last.
Nations was added that, but we can take that off if you want, it's true, but National Indian Heritage Month is November, and that's one of these special observance, national special observance.
Well, considering that we're on there,
Yeah, but that's
Sacred
land.
ground,
How we-
John,
how we
you
screwed
know.
The town
tremendously.
historian had recommended it, so I left it in.
So I'm
And
not-
I think that's fine.
And I just want to make sure that, because the women's suffrage flag is actually, that Women's History Month is actually designated by presidential proclamation
Right,
on an annual basis.
Right.
So I want to make sure that was not stripped if it's only an act of Congress. I'm not aware that an act of Congress is actually designated.
yeah,
that
no,
way.
no, I was gonna say, I didn't want to take the act of Congress out at the beginning of that section for the reason of a flag that's not part of a national special observance. So I'm proposing it reads, only flags recognized by the United States through an act of Congress or flags recognized in relation to a national special emphasis observance by the United States through an act of Congress, presidential proclamation, or executive order shall be flown or displayed.
Sure, I'm fine with that.
So that gives like a reference place that people could go see this narrow definition, narrow why these are there. They're almost always by a proclamation or the executive order. Some are
So
by an
these,
act of
there must be more than these.
Oh, there's
Oh,
lots
there's
more.
tons.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm wondering.
There's
How did
tons.
we, Tompkins County pick these 6? I mean,
No, I reviewed Tompkins County, I reviewed other towns in the area to see what was common, and these are the ones that are commonly flown around here. It doesn't mean that the town board couldn't add additional ones at any point.
well, you know, if somebody is gonna come and. that we
Well,
missed.
then we'll
Well,
take it up. We
that's
can,
why
we
It
can,
can be amended.
But
Yeah.
that's why we're also putting in like where we're getting this definition. We're pretty justified in what we're trying to do and what's been done before. And I was under the impression that the board was not comfortable with a long list of flags and that it should be something very focused. And so that's why it's a focused list that are the common things. And they're all things that are these national observances, except for, well, Juneteenth is a national holiday now, and the POWMA flag is an act of Congress that's required actually to be displayed 6 days a year. So, which I have in the notes there too. So that's why I have those in there and no others.
And how did the county decide? which ones to put?
We picked, or we just went with what the government recognized. We didn't.
Right, which is kind of the same thing, we recognize them in this national archives.
So we had a little bit longer list, but we also
Yeah.
realized that there was a lot of them that didn't have flags, but we left them in there because that way, if there was a flag later on, then we would have to change our policy.
But so for here, I thought maybe it was better for us to stay really narrow because there was concern about
Well, I
even have
also
the
think there's
policy.
benefit too, because, we've had specific flags being requested. And I think that this is much more an outgrowth of what I perceive as mattering in our community, which doesn't say that there aren't other flags at other times that community members might not bring forward. But I think these have been brought to our attention. And I think I think it's a good starting point. We're a much smaller entity than the county. We could look at this policy every other month if we wanted to, and it would be something we could consider. So,
We don't have that much flag space or anything else.
Yeah,
so
really.
The county has a whole complicated way that the flags are flown, where they're flown and everything, but we hardly have any place to fly them. So anyway, I thought that this was a start that was constrained and clearly articulated for what we felt was important. So, and the only other thing I was gonna suggest is that when it says special flags designated in section 5 and 8 will be purchased and provided by the town of Ulysses, and we can add that they shall be the standard flag size 3x5, so that it's clear that, put up some giant flag or something, and that was also in the county's policy.
my only concern about actually a 5-foot length flag is I wouldn't want it dragging on that post.
I guess you could say no larger than.
Yeah, and
Shall
that's,
be-
and because it's not meant to be disrespectful, but I think it would be
No.
deeply disrespectful to have a flag dragging on the ground.
Yeah, no larger than a standard flag size of 2x5. So if the board thinks those are reasonable, you want me to repeat them again, so you
Yes.
have them? Okay, so the suggestion was for number 4 to add C, which says no flags other than the United States of America, New York State will be displayed in the town hall courtroom. And then adding a number, maybe under 6, so it would become 7, and move 7 down to 8. The US flag shall be no smaller than 3 feet by 5 feet, parentheses, standard flag size,
No smaller than or no larger?
smaller.
Okay, then it's no-
Larger, I thought
We're
it was.
talking about the American.
The American
United
flag,
States
which,
flag.
which will hang on our,
Right.
even 5 feet is not too long for our
No.
dinky flagpole.
Right. And shall be kept in good condition and retired appropriately when replacement is needed.
Retiring that flag is now moving quickly up my to-do list,
There you go.
which is an important thing to do, but was
Maybe
not.
and Rose would be interested in helping with that.
I was gonna actually reach out to
The
the
flags
Legion.
are.
No, but she knew about, yeah.
Yeah,
she told us
I'll reach
about
out to the Legion,
Right.
and find out
that.
about.
And then,
We might
And-
have the.
and then in number 7, which would now be 8, changing that wording to read only flags recognized by the United States through an act of Congress, and then deleting the next parts, and then say, or flags recognized in relation to a national, which could be capitalized, special, which is capitalized emphasis, and then observance capitalized by the United States, the same wording to the end of the sentence there.
Orca tonight.
It's Says 74, the thing is not.
And then on 10, and in what is now 10, I think you probably got that last one, the special flags designated in section 5 and section 8 will be purchased and provided by the town of Ulysses and shall be no larger than a standard flag size, 3 feet by 5 feet. So it's never larger than the
Right.
United States flag. So that's it. Those are my. little tweaks. So I'll
Well,
say
those,
other
I think
tweaks.
those are all friendly amendments to my motion, so, and I'm assuming you also approve your own changes. I will just make that assumption. Is there any further comment from the board? Then I will call for a vote. All those in favor?
All right,
Aye. Opposed?
okay.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay. And thank you to the members of the public who joined us and to the many members of the public who are not here, but who expressed their opinions. It is very, the board is very appreciative for anyone who takes the time to do that.
So
Yes.
Do you want to address while we're still on the flag topic? The comment Ann's request that if we pass this, the board would consider purchasing and flying the flag for another month.
Sure, the board would have to make,
We need another resolution. for
we
that.
need a resolution to, so I will suggest a resolution that we purchase and fly the pride flag for a month, for at least 30 days.
Well, no more than 30
No
days,
more,
because that's
yes.
what it says in here.
Um,
For 30 days.
We'll have to get a bracket too.
We have to get a bracket. So yeah, so I don't want to put a date on it because it has the bracket has to be installed and the flag has to be ordered
Well,
but
if we do it now, though, there's no other thing in July,
no, but I won't be able to get it for July 1st, which is Friday.
right? Right, but I
Um,
mean, we don't need another bracket until we have 2 flags. in the city.
But do we have,
Do we have?
we don't have a
on-
bracket.
Oh, I thought we had a bracket.
No, we don't, we have 0 brackets.
Okay,
That's,
never
that's
mind.
not a hard thing to do. We just have to,
I
we have
was
to order it.
Confused, sorry.
So, no, my plan was to install one on the side.
0 bracket.
We have 0 brackets.
Oh, it's gonna be on the town hall?
Yes,
thing?
yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
Huh.
Since you put that in, I thought you knew there was a bracket.
No, that was my recommendation. We
Okay.
we don't have another natural
Okay,
place and
yeah,
the
sorry.
exterior of the building's not well suited for it, given the stone
It's stone,
facing.
yeah.
Yeah. So,
Well, you can drill it.
Okay, that's fine.
so a motion is made to approve the acquisition of a pride flag to be installed as soon as possible for up to 30 days.
So moved. Second.
Is that, no, that's fine. So I'll second it. Any further comment or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Okay.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is, this was actually on last month's agenda, and then I got discombobulated and thought that I had screwed up. I had not screwed up. We were supposed to act on this last month or earlier this month. It's not a problem that we didn't. This is a resolution. You'll remember 2 meetings ago, we did a gatekeepers resolution to apply for a DEC grant through the consolidated funding application for culverts to do a planning grant. This is the actual resolution that will be included in our application packet that specifies the logic of why we're actually seeking funding. And the town board further resolves, which we already did actually in the gatekeepers resolution, but it resolves that we'll provide at least a 10% match of the total grant awarded. So if they give us $100,000, it'll be a 10% match on that. So is there a motion to approve? Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion or comment? Then I will call for a vote. All those in favor?
Right.
Aye.
Right.
Thank you. I'm sorry, any
Oh,
opposed?
aye, sorry.
I assumed you were voting since you moved.
Yeah.
So-
I
so-
was trying to get the resolution on my screen, sorry.
Got it, no problem. Motion carries, thank you. And then next up is a resolution we're gonna need to tweak in live time, which I think is always fun. It's a gatekeepers resolution for a consolidated funding application. So we know that we want to apply for funding to update we're just going to move through this meeting. We're going to be expeditious.
You
It's
know,
gonna be
it
very
goes
expeditious.
over my head and straight to you.
Well, it's hitting me
Hitting
square
me
on. I'm thinking of hiding behind this.
I
which-
wore a warmer shirt because
Can
I
you
used to
turn it
sit
down?
there and I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
freezing.
Turn it
Cold.
Turn it off.
off.
I have learned not to touch anything for fear of breaking the system.
Great year.
Michelle's fully
She's-
familiar with the system.
I'm turning it to fan.
Okay.
Yeah.
In a couple minutes, let me know.
It might be heat next that I'm gonna need.
Ah.
That's much better, thank you. So we know we want to update we know we're going to update our comprehensive plan. We know we would like someone to help us pay for it. What we would like to do tonight is Roxanne and Michelle in particular have been doing yeoman's work, determining which of the 2 options. Now, it's flying away. Which of the two funding options are better suited for us? At this juncture, and I will turn it over to them in just a second. At this juncture, it is not 100% clear to us which will ultimately be a more competitive option for us, and we'd like to pick the more competitive option. If we go with the Department of Conservation, the town will pay 50% of up to $200,000. In-kind services can count towards that match. If we go with the Department of State, it is 90% covered by the grant. The town pays 10% with $100,000 max. What we would like to do in this resolution is get to the point where the board authorizes us to proceed, continuing our investigation and start the application process for whichever one we determine is actually more likely, that we're more likely to get. And then we would come back to you at the next board meeting to do an authorization for the actual application, similarly to what we just did with the DEC culvert grant. So
Can you can't apply for both, you have to pick one or the other.
It seems like you can because you use the consolidated funding application. So the two, and you can look at later the details that are in here, but the two have really different, I call them thematic differences here, so really different focuses to what you're proposing to do in your revision, your creation, or in our case, revision of a comp plan. And so Michelle was going to look further into this because we haven't had time to figure all these details out, whether that might make any sense. And because they're kind of different, but then there is some overlap. And it seems like the idea of a consolidated funding application is that you can apply for more than one. And there's actual wording in the RFAs that say, you know, if you apply for more than one, you know, you wouldn't get both, but they'll look at the one that's the most applicable. So depending on how different they are, which is one of the things we wanted to work further on with Caitlin and Michelle and I, that might make sense and give us a better shot at it overall. But I don't know, Michelle, have you learned any more about that you want to add?
Yeah, so I started looking into just some basic rural smart growth concepts. And I think my major takeaway at this point with just a little bit of digging in is that both of the funding programs are, the themes aren't mutually exclusive. There's going to be elements of climate change in both. There's going to be elements of smart growth in both, just because those are both the foundation of any comp plan if you're going to be reviewing it in these days and times. Those are two huge aspects that are going to be considered. So Roxanne did just ask the question earlier today, well, can we apply for both? And my first instinct is, yeah, we can, but we, you know, given the fact that we have limited time and staffing resources, if it seems feasible, then that's one thing, but if it doesn't seem feasible, we will have to determine which one we think is better.
I mean, it just looks like the DEC grant is closer to what we have in this town.
That was my
It
take. when I was
definitely is.
reading
So
about it.
the thing about it is it's a 50% match, as Caitlin said, not 100. I mean 90. So, and you can make the match by the in-kinds and all of which we could do a lot because it counts volunteer, it counts legal consultation, anything like that. But you're still getting, the board would just need to understand that we're still getting less actual dollars into the town.
Yeah, but I feel like if you read
Right.
the RFA, there's 3 initiatives to be looked at favorably: downtown revitalization,
Right.
strategic.
I don't think so.
That's not what we're.
Right, so
that's
that was
really not what
Michelle's
we're
and
about.
my concern, and so we were trying to look into it more for rural. It really is written for something the size of
Yeah.
the town of Ithaca or bigger, but there are rural aspects, and they do mention, you know, some of the climate sustainability things where the DEC grant mentions smart growth, but in the context of the sustainability.
I just feel
things. And
it doesn't match our needs and who we are, the DOS grant.
And so we do have a chance to get a little bit more information because I emailed Darby Kiley earlier today thinking she, you know, she interacts with a lot of municipalities and is a planner and might have some idea on if it's easier to deal with the DEC or the DOS and all that. And she didn't really, but she did mention to me that the town of Dryden had applied for the DEC grant last time. and they didn't get it, but, you know, we could give him a call to Michelle. I told Michelle that, and she's gonna do that. So we can get some insight on that one, a little bit further insight on that one. But, and it's the way that it's scored is the issue, you know, in terms of the prioritization of certain types of things that you're gonna look at or do. And so the scoring is just different, and it's more laid out in more detail, as I said here, for the DEC grant than it is for the DOS grant. Like they give you a line for each thing that if you include it and do it well, you get this many points. Whereas the DOS has, you know, this many points in a little paragraph sort of.
And I just think if we going after the DOS grant is a little, what word can I use? Doesn't have a lot. Isn't really right.
Well, the only thing I would say about the downtown is I actually think there's a very persuasive case to be made about Jacksonville, particularly the fact that we now have Jacksonville as a independent census tract. So there's really persuasive economic and socioeconomic data that we can put in there if the board is interested in prioritizing Jacksonville and which I think we frankly very much need to. In the comp plan, I think that there's a very good case for making it. This is a rural downtown. We have a lot of good evidence to actually back that up. So,
Well, that's
I don't
an
know if
interesting
it's
point,
written.
actually, because if we, either one, the being a disadvantaged community gives you points in the scoring matrix for both funding sources. It gives you more in the scoring matrix for the DEC than it does for the DOS. And the town of Ulysses as a whole does not meet the median household income criteria for a disadvantaged community. But maybe if you're
Jacksonville
including,
will, I bet.
you know, if
Yeah.
you're talking about Jacksonville as part of it, and they do, that might, in either one of these, make us qualify for that. And so that's a good point. And I mean, I certainly, you know, the DEC one talks about plans for walking and biking and all these other kind of things and energy things. So we can include what we want in Jacksonville in either one. But that's an interesting point. That we haven't really thought of that.
I personally don't have a strong lean towards either one. I think more information would be useful in doing it. So I would make a simple motion that the town board authorizes the supervisor's office to continue the investigation and select the appropriate CFA funding landing spot funding source for comprehensive funding, recognizing that the match to the town will be between 10 and 50%, and with funding up to $200,000.
So I assume that there's additional stuff that you need to complete for the CFA, depending on which grant you're applying for.
Yeah, but there's also a lot that's the same, there's a lot that we could work on in the meantime while we look at these things, and they'll be used anyway. So, I mean, when Michelle and I talked about that, obviously she's the one taking the load, the largest load and getting this out. And she thought it would make better sense to have a little more time to decide, and we could still get it done in time, and work on, you know. So she was looking at some smart growth things. We brainstormed a bunch of things that I was writing down in terms of the climate smart communities one. We can just put those together and try to have a meeting table if she's available and wants to, and just work through as a, you know, your obvious expertise that. So
We would not be applying for it before the next town board meeting. So
no,
we would, but
it's due July 29th.
I didn't want to dedicate tremendous staff time to a project if the board wasn't. I wanted the gatekeepers resolution to kind of frankly give me the authorization to start using town resources, knowing that we will come back to you before the application is submitted and with complete details.
Right, because I think that there's slight differences in what they want for a resolution,
Mm.
depending on what the program is. At least I had looked in detail for DEC one. We didn't get to looking at the CFA for the Department of State one and seeing what they asked for, but they want specific things specified. If they want a resolution, which at least the DEC does, they want specific things specified on it. So it would be very hard to do it today.
Michelle, was there anything else you wanted to add to the conversation?
Well, no, just that at this point, I do feel comfortable. I do think we have thematically aligned ability to provide a strong application and for either one at this point is where I'm going.
Okay, so I made a motion to be able to proceed with either of these.
Second.
Any further discussion or comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Okay, we need to go into executive session.
Do you want me to leave? Would that be easier?
Yes,
Do you want to
we're gonna,
text me?
sure. I don't anticipate it being particularly long.
Okay.
We're gonna, the purpose of the executive session is related to specific employees or appointed persons, and also in relationship to advice of counsel. Is there a motion to move into executive session for those
So
reasons?
moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
On, we just came out of executive session. No action was taken during the executive session, and we are proceeding with our approved agenda. For anybody who was reviewing the original one, it's item B, which has become item A, which is the budget development discussion. The original item A has been postponed to a future meeting. So there's a handy dandy handout of budget process proposal. And I wanted Michelle to be here for this. Let me call her. She's got her notifications set.
Is this revised or different than we've done in the past?
This is a new process. This is a new recommendation.
This is a, yeah.
Budget retreat.
Michelle?
And then with food, I don't know.
Well, you have to have food or better street. I just can't promise to bake it. I buy things. I like to bake, but I don't have time. So. Exactly. There you go, see? Okay, so I can tell you that the idea of having kind of changing around our budget process a little bit, or tweaking, I don't think changing around. We moved into the direction of, we're very unusual in the last couple of years about how we've handled budgets. It's very rare for any board, municipal board, to do line by line in public session for every single item. And I think that was a very useful experience for me. But what I think one of the unintended side effects of that is that you really can't get some of the really authentic conversations with staff completely in public session, because you're in public session. And so it's helpful in the budget development process. It doesn't mean that hard questions shouldn't be asked and answered, but it does mean that there might be an unintentional reluctance to speak as openly as possible if you know you're being recorded and the entire public is watching. It's just a very different experience than having a pretty frank discussion about issues. Now, doesn't mean the board can't do line by line in certain situations. It doesn't mean that we want to prevent board members from participating. There are ways for board members to participate in absolutely every single part of the process. If we have 3 board members, we just have to make it a public session. But this was a recommendation that this is a revised version of what the finance committee saw last week, based on the feedback from Rich and Mary. And Michelle is here to talk more, and also Blixie is the one who actually drafted this document. So Lexi, if you would like to unmute yourself and join the conversation, I'm sure you have plenty to say as well, and so does Michelle.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, Lexi.
Hey.
So I don't know if you have questions or if there's anything you wanted me to speak to while I'm here, or talk about my experience with other places, whatever you're interested in.
Was my summary appropriate, Lexi? Did I hit on what I needed to hit on, or did I miss anything?
I didn't catch the entire summary, but it sounded good, what I heard.
Okay. Michelle,
Sorry, I've got loud vehicles in my neighborhood.
no problem.
She needs zoning.
Yeah.
They don't want zoning in Newfield.
So the goal here essentially is to have both a more in-depth for board members who would like to go in deep, and then also expedited process. Making the assumption that it is somewhat painful to go line by line, but as Rich said, there's a lot that comes out of those discussions. So the idea here is that we're striking a balance between trying to be efficient with our time and also having authentic, in-depth conversations with board members who are interested in specific areas. So this plan strikes a balance between all.
We thought there might be board members who really want to go line by line in specific parts of the budget. But that's not necessarily that they want to do the entire budget. But so this was something that we put forward to try and strike those goals.
And if you don't mind, I do have just a couple comments about each one of these bullet points, just as a quick review of this document. The board retreat is something that I think would be a really great idea to provide us some more information about the direction of the budget season, and also just to lay the groundwork about the context that we'll be working within. I'm hoping that we can schedule that tonight. I don't know if that's still a possibility or not, but aiming for the first week in August, which means that we'll have our taxable assessed value by then. I theoretically, if things go as they usually go, we'll have that number by then. We'll also likely have our tax capital. So that'll be some foundational conversations that we'll have about what we're looking at for this budget season. Additionally, we've scheduled department one-on-ones with Caitlin and I, July 14th, where we've asked department heads to begin earlier than ever to start thinking about big and new projects. That's what we call them. Big and new, what's coming up for 2023 that would impact the budget that are unusual, or we might not have, not things that we haven't been, any projects that they think might be added to their work in 2023. So I think that will go a long way in helping us get an idea of setting the context at what the board wants to see as far as the big pillars that set the budget, set the structure of the budget. These large regular revenues and expenses. Department meetings, so that next bullet down there. The idea, this idea came out of the finance committee conversation, which is that we're going to be scheduling in the first, let's see, these department meetings would be scheduled for the weeks of 9/12 and 9/19, where we would be asking board members that if you're interested in meeting and getting that line by line review for a specific department, that you'll be RSVPing essentially in time for us to post open meetings and adhere to open meetings law if there's more than 3 board members that will be there. So that will be the plan with that. And so that's the idea with those department meetings. The tentative budget, I just wanted to point out that the state requirement is that we have that by September 30th, but our current goal based on the calendar that we're looking at right now would be September 23rd. And then the budget working sessions, those are not going to be the line by line. It's going to be we'll take sections of the budget and the idea is during regular town board meeting, maybe there's a certain amount of time set aside that's when we'll ask those specific questions based on what's in the tentative budget. So opposed to taking the time, doing those 8 AM meetings, those 8 AM town board meetings where we go line by line, this would be during regular budget, or regular town board meetings. And then we'll also have an opportunity to schedule an extra meeting if we can't fit those in October. So we'll have time before we have to actually adopt the budget, which right now our goal is November 8th. So the idea is that we cover budget topics during regular town board meetings, and then town board members are invited to those specialized department budget line by line review. So based on interest.
One of the reasons too for doing that is the potential for better public involvement and actually attending those workshops is when it happens at a regular meeting, as opposed to the public basically never joins us at 8 AM. And so it doesn't mean they couldn't watch the recording, but it does increase transparency and public participation potentially, which would be great. So.
I think as long as, you know, it can fit within the meeting and the other things that have to be done, that's okay, because you don't want to be working on things when you're too tired and all. And so some, you know, really well scheduled, this is about the budget meetings with enough notice, maybe 8 AM is the best time or whatever. The public still has a chance to know about it too. So some combination of those things, depending on the other work. I think
Right,
makes
and
sense.
we can absolutely, like
Yeah.
Michelle said, we can schedule additional
Right.
meetings if it becomes necessary.
Yeah.
And again, the meetings, the department heads, which would actually be going into some of the delving in on the line by line, those might too be very public, might be public meetings if 3 town board members want to participate. This is really giving the town, putting a lot of power into the town board members to say, I want to opt in on participating in this discussion.
Yeah, I don't know, I have a different view. I found it really valuable. I mean, I didn't like the idea in the beginning to go line by line, but when we do it together, people bring up things that I never would have thought of. And so I think there's something about being, that it's required that we do, I mean, not required, but that we encourage. I like the line by line, that all the town board is there for 3 meetings. We go through every line.
It wasn't 3 meetings.
Yes, it was.
No,
It's
it
like
was more than
12,
3
I think.
meetings,
Like
because I
three-
watched them, yeah.
No, it's 3 or 4, max 4 meetings.
No, I mean, no, I'm sorry, I hate to say it, no, it wasn't. I
Oh,
mean,
okay,
it
yeah,
was,
look at the minutes.
it was a
Wasn't 12.
lot, it was a lot of
Wasn't 12.
meetings. I mean, it wasn't 12, but
Well,
well, I mean, it was a lot of meetings. The other thing is too, I think we're not getting great information necessarily from staff, because when we go line by line, then the board starts, and it's not a criticism when I say it starts nitpicking, which is what line by line is.
Right,
But you're having staff who aren't necessarily giving you all the information because of the stress of being in a public meeting. And you can't have some of those franker conversations in a full public meeting every single time. So the board has to recognize that there are some benefits to having everybody there, and there are some drawbacks to having everybody there. And just you have to take it for what it's worth. There's going to be benefits and drawbacks regardless.
Rich,
So-
are you suggesting to not have this part of this structure to do line by line?
normally,
Because
in
it sounds
the
like
last
this
few
structure
years,
is to sort of eliminate.
the budget,
line by line.
I mean, the budget office from the supervisor would come together, and they would have a presentation ready to go
Right.
for the line by line. They would have already done the work of meeting with the departments, right? Right, that's how it was the last few years.
Right, but I think what happened is what, at least, and that is how it has been done. But what I think happened is that town board members asked very valid questions during that process. I would like to have you not in the tentative budget. I would like to have you, before we have a tentative budget, ask those questions so we can tailor it towards the goals of the town board. After the preliminary budget, it's too late, frankly. It doesn't mean it can't be changed, but the thematic goals, the philosophical goals should come, in my opinion, should come before the preliminary budget, so that we are right. That's why they were having the goal of having a budget retreat, is that we establish the philosophical basis. For instance, do we want to exceed that tax cap? Are we comfortable exceeding the tax cap? If the answer is no, then that fundamentally needs to underwrite everything that comes afterwards. Right? And so what are we going to prioritize? What are the big picture things that we want to make sure that we fund properly so that when Michelle and I, mostly Michelle, but when we work with the department heads, we want to make sure that the department's goals are aligned with what the town board wants to achieve. So doing that in advance, I think we're going to get a much better budget. We're going to get much more authentic communication, and the town board is not getting stuck with whatever I think is the best idea. Because that's what you get if you get my preliminary budget. It's going to be whatever I think is great.
understand that.
Yeah, so, which I'm also okay with, but I don't think it's going to be as supported by the board. I would like permission to try it 1 year. We can always go back to the other model. But the way we did it for the last 2 years is just, maybe Blake, so you can speak to this. It's tedious and it's not how other municipalities do it.
It's
Like,
not how we used to do it, I'll just say.
Blake, do you have anything you'd like to feed into that?
Yeah, well, the one thing I'd also like to point out, and I know, Rich, you pointed this out in our committee meeting as well, your concerns. And the fact is you're still going to get as much detailed information as you always have. So anybody can raise a question about any line in the budget if that's, if they have a concern or a question or want feedback from other board members. But my experience with other governmental entities is that the focus is really on making sure that the budget isn't aligned with some of the bigger picture goals, that changes from practice or new things are specifically called out. That it's really more strategic, a strategic process, because that's what's really going to help you get where you want to be. And not that you shouldn't dive into something you have a question about if you do. And I think this process gives you the opportunity to do that. But to spend that much time on very small items, you could easily miss the forest for the trees,
Right.
And so for the board, I think it's better practice to try to inform the process up front, make sure you're hearing from department heads and budget managers earlier on in the process, and really trying to set the stage for what's coming. So, I mean, that's, and then, Caitlin and Michelle can guide that process and support that process as I can as well. But that's my experience with other municipalities. So.
All right, well,
Yeah, Roxanne.
I think this is a really good idea. I mean, I've done this a few times too. And I think that giving the time in the beginning to have people on the board be as engaged as they want to in particular parts of the topic is a great idea. And as Lixie just said, you can always ask about any particular line once a tentative budget is presented, and you do go through the big picture outline of we did this, we increased this by this, we're asking for this, it's a big change, you can see the changes in the tentative anyway. And I guess I've always thought that it's really the responsibility of board members to read the budget and come in prepared ahead of time and look at it and have some questions rather than have to be led through every single thing line by line, where you potentially miss some of the bigger picture. And I don't think it's good for the public either, because they just sit there and go, oh my God. I mean, I listened to those
They were
meetings
scintillating,
because
right?
I am familiar with the whole thing and the process, and I still found it right. So I don't even know that you'll get anybody to actually engage doing that. And so I support this. I think it's a good idea, having made these budgets and had to drive this process myself for a few years. So I agree with it.
And I think that, if you have the interest, you could go to the department meeting.
That's right.
Oh,
That's what I
absolutely.
mean. You can
Yeah.
go, if you care, if you really care about the supervisor's office and how much money they're spending, you can go there and
Please
ask the
come.
questions.
Yes.
Or, the zoning and planning
Exactly.
and get somewhat of an understanding. It doesn't mean you don't want to bring it up in public if you have a concern that's not being met or it's not fitting together in the bigger picture, but at least you have a chance to ask ahead of time.
And you can actually ask questions that are not line item related, because a lot of times, right, that the underlying rationale for a request is much bigger than that single line item. It's a reflection of, well, why are we asking for more staff resources, right? And it's like, well, because here are all the reasons why I'm really struggling. No town board or no staff member wants to say in public, I'm really struggling with X, right? That is a very uncomfortable thing to do. But in a department meeting, in a smaller meeting, and I can even step out of the room, or, there's ways for people to have those conversations that are appropriate, really get to the heart of why certain things are being asked for in the budget. And I really think it could be a really great opportunity for the board to actually interact with staff in some really positive ways, because we spent 2 years not really doing that. And I think that that's had cultural impacts on town hall overall. And so I would really love your support just to try this out, tweak it, we can always go back to the old system next year.
Yeah, right.
But if the board would, I really think the board can have some amazing buy-in at the beginning of the year, because historically, in January is where we're supposed to set what our work plan ideas are. That's not when you should be setting what your work plan ideas are for the year. You should be setting them with the budget. And that's what we can do at a board retreat, is actually say, what are we tackling? What's our plan for 2023? And
I think this
Fund it.
approach has the potential to increase the efficiency of this budget season process, which I think would be a really good thing, given the amount of things that are on the town board's plate to be dealing with. And so I definitely think it's worth a try. And the support.
Which is that there is so many examples throughout budget season where we presented the tentative budget to the board asked really amazing questions, and then I have to go back and rework it. To have those amazing questions asked before we submit the tentative budget, and talk about efficiency.
Right, exactly.
And that's what, as a whole, the finance committee has created a situation where I'm now being asked really excellent questions by board members that totally informs the process and makes it all more efficient in general. So
that is so much helpful to have those questions at the front end rather than trying to like.
All right, you guys won. All right, shush.
Oh, that's funny. Okay, well, thank you,
Better
Rich.
have her victory lap. Yeah.
They don't happen very often, Rich. They don't happen that often.
It's not easy trying to be the supervisor, come up with new ideas. Let her have
Well,
it.
I have to say, this is a Michelle idea, and Blixie fine-tuned it into the proposal you're reviewing today. But it stemmed from me saying, I don't want to do the budget the way we've handled it before, because I found it mind numbing and I lost the forest for the trees. So, okay, thank you.
What was it now? Do you want to work on the date of this retreat?
Oh,
Are we
yes,
moving on?
yes. So we're looking at the first week in August.
Would this be like an evening thing?
We could do an evening thing, we could do a daytime thing, we
How
could do a
long are you
morning thing,
thinking?
How long are we talking for?
Yeah, how long? do you-
Michelle?
a couple hours,
I
right?
would say 2 hours would be.
So I prefer 8 to 10.
8 to 10?
I could do it I could do the second, third, or fourth would be preferable to me than the Monday or the Friday, if those are
Let's do-
possible.
We don't have a board meeting.
No, it's the
So
ninth
do the Wednesday. Wednesday is what day?
The third,
Third.
or the second.
Either
Works for me
one, either
Tuesday.
one.
Second is better.
All right, so let's do the second.
Michael, what about you? Does the second work?
So that's like
I
8
often have
AM to
work
10.
things.
Yeah.
I sometimes have work things that come up on Wednesdays and day that a bunch of stuff
Okay, so
often
Tuesday.
gets scheduled. So if we could do Tuesday, I'd say. But I will make whatever works for everyone.
So I'm assuming your retreat is, it's a town board meeting.
Yes.
It needs to be.
It has to be.
Yep.
And probably what we would do is,
So a retreat has to be done in public session. 'Cause I thought that you could do them and not have to.
Nate, that's a question for you. What's our leeway to do a retreat? We
Yeah,
had this
so
conversation before, and I can't remember what you told me. It
yep,
was like-
so retreats, and specifically retreats, are meant to build cohesiveness amongst the public body and to educate and to inform them about various like strategic items. And so I think that the topics that have been presented are appropriate topics for a retreat. And therefore it does not constitute a meeting, which constitutes an open meetings law, public session. That being said, you all have to be very conscious of what you're discussing and talking about at the thing that you are holding as a budget retreat. Because it's a fine line, and I don't want anybody to fall on one side or the other inappropriately. And so you need to just be conscious of that as you hold that meeting or hold that discussion and talk about things.
Well, in my ear is the esteemed Mr. Howard saying what happened to the open meeting, that you need to have these kind of meetings.
No, that is, I will correct that again, but not right now.
No, I think it's a valid point.
That was,
I mean, I think it's a very
it was a
valid,
very targeted
I think it's a very,
issue.
it's a valid.
That was a targeted
So
issue.
my question is,
I think,
we had a budget narrative on the website for past budgets. Does that still exist?
No, budget, I mean, they're still out there, they're just not on the website right now. It's the
Did we do
budget
one,
stuff
or did Nancy do one
for
for last year?
repository. I think so.
Yeah, there was
Nancy
a narrative
did
last
one.
year. Yeah.
Yeah,
So where is it?
They can be restored.
Because that's helpful, I think, and then it'll be after June, so we can do our year-to-date halfway through to see where we are, because our budget increased substantially this year. And I'm curious, going through the vouchers, I don't feel like we've got the same spend rate.
I think we've saved a lot of money. And because we
Not
haven't
having
had
a planner.
employees.
So yeah, there's a lot of
Right.
things
And
missing.
And the sale,
Deputy clerk. and-
right,
Right,
Yeah.
so I think that will help inform us if we want to do,
right.
go
More
towards
towards-
planning or
we'll
whatever.
have to.
There's gonna be, and we have a
Right.
lot of
We get
reserves.
that summary.
So we have to
get that
decide.
Summary.
Yeah.
From Brooksy,
You know,
Yeah.
With
but
these
the
strategic
condensed, not
things, we're
90
gonna,
pages of Williamson.
draw
Just
draw
the-
down some of our
Just the
reserves.
bottom line summary for each line.
Nate, I really wonder
But-
if that's appropriate. I mean, I got the fine line, but I'm a little uncomfortable doing that.
I don't mind it being public.
I don't mind it being public either.
I think what we could do is probably start with an executive session today, the public, and review the things that are sensitive in that way. Somewhere in that board retreat, we can go into executive session and talk about the personal side
Right.
of things.
Yeah, if those come up.
But I
Well,
think
they
in-
will.
They
For the
absolutely
context.
will.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So we could break out for those.
I think we should start in public, and then if there's an issue with personnel or something.
That's fine. No problem. Okay, so we're gonna do it on the August 2nd at 8 AM. And I move that Mary brings cinnamon rolls. I'm not actually making that. But it was very kind of Roxanne to volunteer.
I've had it before, so I- She brings some bike rides.
We made it a couple times.
I did want to make a comment about Michelle's timeline, and maybe, not that it necessarily changes anything, except November 8th, the target deadline for the budget presentation, and all that is a town board meeting night, but it's also the election, the general election day or night or so, I don't know.
What's the election day?
November 8th. So I don't know if you want to have that,
Yeah, so.
have a discussion that night.
The reason why that's done that way is because we have to schedule the public hearing before the Thursday directly following the election. Remember that connection
Yeah.
with that? So the idea would be that we'd be ready to schedule the public hearing that
It has to be like the 10th, the Thursday right after.
night. Yes, right, yep. On or before.
I thought
The
that that's
Thursday
when you wanted to
following.
have the budget voted on, not the tentative budget. You said to have the budget done. Is that the preliminary budget day?
Well, the idea would be that we would schedule the public hearing once we have what we think is the adopted budget. We'd be ready to. 'Cause that's
I thought you
typically
scheduled
how-
a public hearing for the preliminary budget. And then if you want to change it after that, you have to. Well, it depends how extensive it is. I didn't think you,
That's what it says in here.
we can't
Oh, wait,
schedule
the
the
public
public
hearing.
hearing after we.
Sorry, the public hearing
Is that?
has to be held
after you have
On
a
or before
preliminary,
the Thursday,
based on the preliminary budget that we published.
right?
So you're not talking about having the whole thing done on November 8th, is all I'm asking. You're talking about maybe having the preliminary budget
Hearing?
definitely
that's
done
it.
by the 8th. Is that what you're talking about? So that we can
So,
set the public hearing for it?
so my understanding is that the public hearing has to be held on or before, not scheduled, I missed.
Oh, Okay,
It's held on or before the Thursday following the general election. which would be
so then we need the preliminary budget before that.
Well,
Well,
this
the
says
tentative
tentative
budget's the
budget by
30th.
September 30th.
Yeah, but that's a tentative, but then the preliminaries, after you pass it from tentative, you make a bunch of edits as you want to, and then you pass it to
Right.
preliminary. And that's the one that goes to the public hearing, you publish with the public hearing. Is that right, Carissa?
Yeah.
Am I remembering that right? Okay. So it's two different budgets. The tentative is the start. The whole thing assembled together. And then you work on it, and then you pass it through. I'm pretty sure that's how it goes, but
Yeah.
I might
That's
be
what
wrong.
this says.
That is
So-
correct. What you're saying is correct. The tentative, then the preliminary, then the public hearing, and then the adopted.
Right. And I think what we've done in the past, unless there's major items that come out of the public hearing, is that we've adopted the budget at the public hearing. A lot of times.
Right.
Yes.
The board does, I think, have the right to
Right.
make changes.
Yeah,
without
you
them
can, but
being-
you should certainly leave enough time before the 20th that you could go back.
Right, yeah,
And if it's too extensive, you have to have another public hearing.
right, right.
The only
So
thing
you
is
really
remind
want
us
the
that it's
preliminary to be pretty,
locked down.
pretty good.
Yep.
All right.
Okay.
Cool. I'm excited.
We'll make sure the dates are all.
Yeah,
perfect.
anyway, I was just.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Nope. Good.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Yay.
Excellent.
Thank you. I'm really looking forward to the budget season.
It'll be a
Not even
party.
being facetious. With Lissy, you know, it's amazing to have. Lissy here. Thank you, Lissy.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Shall I go?
Lexi.
Okay, bye.
You're free.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you for coming. Bye-bye.
Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you.
Okay, so next on the agenda is to tackle a local law to authorize the town of Ulysses and its subcommittees, and it should be, and its committees and subcommittees. My agenda item was slightly wrong. It should be its committees and subcommittees to use video conferencing technology to participate in public meetings. So basically, we've had a policy that was totally legal until the legislature passed new legislation. And now what we need to do is we need to adopt a law that allows us to set our meeting procedures. So we're ahead of the curve for already having meeting procedures. But Nate, did I screw that up?
Are we scheduling a public hearing?
We're scheduling a public hearing, but yes, we're going to be scheduling the public hearing. But I just was introducing why we need to have a model law. We're not adopting the law.
Yes. Yes.
I'm not adopting the law, I used your guys' resolution. So basically what we're looking at is a local law tonight that allows us for committees and subcommittees and the board
To set our policy,
to set our policies.
for allowing that
Right.
to happen.
So tonight, we are not adopting the law. Tonight, we are not setting our policies. But what this resolution on page 2, the bottom of page 2 does is it allows us to schedule a public hearing in order to consider adopting this law, and then we could go on and adopt this law on the 12th. And the intention is the legislature's Albany's law authorizing, allowing municipalities to use video conferencing. There were some changes that were required so our actual current existing policies are being tweaked. And because it's complicated and because this is the first time, we're actually having legal counsel do that. And so before, I think next week is what you said, we thought you'd have the procedures.
I'm hoping to have it to you like tomorrow or Thursday latest.
Okay, Great. So the town board, I will send them out as soon as I get them, so the town board can review them, and so that we can actually talk about those procedures at the meeting on the 12th also. So the idea would be, we set the public hearing tonight for the 12th, we hear the public. If everybody's okay, we adopt the law, and then we discuss the recommended procedures.
And we just adopt those, but it's not a local law. It's
Right,
just a resolution.
exactly. So we can actually potentially take care of everything on July 12th, and the current executive order expires on the 14th. And if they're not timely in their extension like they were last time. Well, no, it is kind of a trigger law, but it's always the underlying bedrock law, and then the state law with the exemption, overrides it basically, kind of thing. So bad legal example, but basically tonight, I will move that
So this will
we,
be the states that we're adopting.
yeah, so this is actually the model law that originated from AOT. Is that right, Nate?
Correct. Yep.
And Nate's office has been working through lots of other municipalities. They've been talking to open meetings people about everything. And so this is to the best of their knowledge, this is the most kosher approach we can take.
So
Correct.
I'm moving that we have this local, it'll be on the 12th at the beginning of our next meeting.
I just have a no, we're also doing the public information session for exotic animals that is scheduled from 6:30 to 7:30.
Oh,
if that can't be-
I don't think I want to see the feedback if we do that. Then let's do this one at 7:30. I think it'll be fast. I don't think we're gonna get it. I mean, if the public does want to participate, I don't anticipate us having a whole lot of public feedback.
This is for what night?
The 12th, so we'll do this at
July
7:30.
Do you think we'll need an hour for the exotic?
No, we can always terminate it earlier, but then what we could do is we would continue running the meeting until 7:30, then we would close that meeting, we would open the public hearing at 7:30. Run it, close, we wouldn't, no, we table the meeting, right, Nate?
Well, so what I would suggest is scheduling this public hearing to take place at 7:05. And then, when you inevitably run over with the prior public hearing, you don't have to table anything. It's just like, oh, we overran from the prior one, we're starting the next one.
But it's not a here. I thought it was the public
It's
information.
just an
session.
It's a public information session.
So it's not a
Oh.
hearing, the exotic animals.
We could probably slice this 6 different ways. You could schedule this at 7, and then as soon as you open the meeting, say to the folks, oh, we're going to adjourn it and until 7, until after the public information session, or just schedule it for 7:30, in which case hope that the information session goes on long. I don't think you need to get overly wrought about it, whichever you choose.
So Nate, could we schedule the public information session starts at 6:30? We schedule our town board meeting for starting at 7. Because you can always start the board meeting late, right? Not early. And
Correct.
then if we get done then early with less than an hour on the exotic animals, then we can just start our regular town board meeting. And then at 7:30, we can do the public hearing.
Yeah, I think that would be perfectly fine. So like you just said, 6:30 information session. It runs past 7 o'clock. Your normal town board meeting scheduled to start at 7. I can even see public hearings scheduled to start at 7, but you don't convene the meeting until when you actually convene the meeting, and then you immediately roll into the public hearing.
Okay.
I mean, the information session could continue past half an hour as privilege of the floor too, maybe, or I don't know. It just seems like an hour for that's going to be a lot, but yeah, we have to leave space. I guess. Okay.
So can we just leave it at 7:30? Do this at 7:30? And because what I don't, in case anybody really wants to come to this, I don't want them to have to then linger and wait.
Yeah. that's true.
So so,
Sure.
okay. So I made the motion, we will have the public hearing at 7:30 on July 12th. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further comment or discussion? All those in favor?
All right.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Oh, I just want to remind, it's time to switch the review of the payments. So you two start in July.
Well, I gotta do it one more month,
Okay,
because he,
for Roxanne, you do the review of the vouchers.
Okay.
Try and remember.
Let's moving on. So next item is volunteer contract for IT services. So we, Mr. Levine has for like 21 years been the administrator of the town's website and the domain that's ulysses.ny.us. And for a number of reasons, the town desires to transition to a new website with the domain name commonly known as townofulysses.gov. And the resolution that's provided in your packet is actually the language of the contract that I'm requesting the town board authorizes. Mr. Levine has indicated he does not want compensation for his, he has never asked or never wanted compensation for his services he has provided, which is very generous. He does not want compensation for the services that we're requesting he still provide. We're requesting two different things. One, that he basically will be up and running with the .gov, which is just a much better, for any number of reasons. We really want to move to the .gov. I think the town has for a number of years, but we're now able to. We're going to, in mid-July, be able to move to the .gov name, where our website will be located. We're asking that Mr. Levine forwards the traffic from the current domain. So any traffic that comes to that gets automatically forwarded to the new domain. And additionally, that he shall also redirect the mail domain records to the new domain and or the server that's going to be responsible for housing our email, because what we're working towards is being able to not have to forward email to other accounts. We want, for any number of reasons, we need to have better control. The comptroller noted it. We need to have better control over our email.
so will we get new email address?
Eventually, yes. We're not quite there yet. We're taking care of the website first, and but eventually you'll get a .gov email address.
So who's setting up the website?
We have the contractor we have for our website service. We already have a contractor in place that's the town has had a relationship with through for
Oh, okay. So
for
they're
any number of
just-
years.
Now that we have the other domain, they're gonna move it.
So we didn't have to go out for new contracting services.
And John Levine reviewed this
So we talked about,
contract. And
no, he hasn't, he's not reviewed this contract. I have talked to him about this actual work.
Okay.
But before I provided him with the actual contract, I wanted the town board to be comfortable. It's basically, he's already told me he doesn't want to accept compensation. But we actually need to have, even on a volunteer basis, we really do need contracts in place. That was very much what the comptroller said. So this is the step to get us there. But we've been working with him and he's been very helpful. So,
Yes, I just, he's good with it. He's reviewed this. Good. Like if we pass it, then
well,
he's gonna be good with it and it'll.
I mean,
go forward.
honestly, I don't know, but with any contractor, you know,
We're gonna present this to him and then it might come back again.
right, and there may be a situation where that it's never actually signed. But it's important for us to have on the record what we're attempting to do, which is have the contract. But as Neha has pointed out, you can't make people sign contracts. So this is our responsibility to have a contract, and so anyway, that's the contract. So I will make a motion to approve the volunteer contract for IT services. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And I would like to follow up with that with a resolution of appreciation for Mr. Levine, because he has been an incredible resource to the town. He has provided invaluable volunteer technology services to the town of Ulysses for more than 2 decades. And whereas Mr. Levine's knowledge, skill, and generosity has been deeply appreciated by the current and past town boards. And whereas we are grateful to local experts for sharing their knowledge with the town to the benefit of the entire community. Now therefore be it resolved that the town of Ulysses recognizes Mr. John Levine for his incredible public service and thanks him for his generosity, civic purpose, and technological expertise. there a second? Any further comment? All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. And then the next item is Chair of CSAC.
Right, so if I may speak. So we, the CSAC committee was chaired by Mark DeVocatus, and he recently resigned from the committee. So we actually don't have a chair at the moment. And Roxanne has volunteered to step up to be chair, and you also sent out an email to the members asking if anybody else was interested, and as far as I know, no one.
Right, well, I asked, yeah, is anybody interested? I'm happy to talk with you about what's involved or anything, haven't been it. And no, Kate Darfler was the person I thought might be able to be, but she said she can't take that on. right now.
Interested. Okay.
And supported us just getting back going and me stepping
Right,
in to
right.
help with that. Who else said that? Barra said
Farah
that.
said that.
Right, Andy Hillman just said he's gonna attend a meeting. I haven't heard from the other people yet. So.
But anyway, I think that, you know, we have a few things on our plate, and it would be nice to get back to meeting on a regular basis. So I would like to propose that Roxanne be appointed chair of the committee for the rest of the year.
Are you moving that? Are you moving that?
I'm
Mary?
moving that.
I
Yeah.
will second that. Any further discussion?
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you, Roxanne. That's very generous. I didn't ask you if you were willing to do it, so. we
Well, I
just-
offered to, just to
Thank you.
try to get us,
Going.
keeping us
Yeah.
going, yeah. Yeah, I'm happy to do it just because. I'm familiar with the issues anyway.
No, it's great. We
It's not
appreciate
that
it.
much more, we just need to have. a couple of meetings. We're trying to get one organized.
The next item on the agenda is just a notification in public of the emergency expenditure for Water District 3. I provided the town board with an email. Chris, can you, if you let me know if you need me to forward you that again, that could actually be included in the agenda or the minutes. Because it delves into the specificity of basically we had a screen that has been gradually failing. We knew there was in May, when we dealt with the contractor, we were informed that basically these have life cycles and that we needed to budget for a replacement for 2023. Unfortunately, it started having diminished capacity. And it hasn't failed yet, but it's one of those screens that's getting like lighter and lighter. And if we don't have that screen, we do not have as good of access over understanding what is going in and out of our water. We obviously want to make sure that we know what's happening. And so the reason I authorized it under the emergency procurement requirements is because it was very time sensitive to be able to get it in the supply chain continues to be an issue. And because we were able to order it quickly, we're supposed to have the replacement in August. The screen continues to be diminishing in function, but still functioning. Should it fail, the Aqua Store can basically lend us one, which we'll have to pay for in interim so that we can always have the service coverage that we need. So, but I just wanted to make the board aware of that and the public aware of it also, because it did fall outside our normal procurement policies. Upcoming event, I'm sorry, were there any questions on that? I didn't have any questions in email, but I just wanted to make sure nobody, okay. Upcoming events, Town Hall will be closed on Monday for the 4th of July, and then we have our regular meetings on the 12th and the 26th of this month. And then on August 2nd, looking forward, we will have our budget retreat. Are there any board member announcements? Yes.
Oh, the first thing is that I did go to the county home unveiling of the historic marker.
Oh, wonderful.
It was very well attended. There were
That's great.
There were a lot
probably
of cars.
50 people there.
Nice.
Yeah.
Maybe
Great.
a half of them were 12 tribes. But they had music and refreshments, and it was a beautiful day and interesting structure. And the other thing that I just wanted to mention was, right before this meeting, I was in the rec partnership. And they're looking at an increased budget for them. They're working on their budget for next year. And the thing is, the minimum wage is going up from $13.20 to $14.20. Which means that, like, so for all of their aides that work in the summer camp, you know, the high school kids, they're gonna be paid more. And then, you know, the specialists and the assistant directors, and so everybody else, so it's like a ripple effect.
Right.
Throughout throughout the rec partnership in terms of salaries. So, so they're looking at a maintenance of effort budget, which would increase our contribution from $7,800 to a couple $1,000 higher to $9,700. So I'm sure that's not going to be the last of the increases for the budget for next year. But I thought I would just bring that up.
Question that's not related to the budget. Are they gonna bring swimming lessons back in the winter?
Well, I
That
don't
got
know.
eliminated because of COVID. And they
Where
ran
were
a,
they doing those?
they were doing it at Ithaca High School. They were great swim lessons.
Yeah, I don't know. They didn't say anything about
Okay.
that, so.
Well, that's my personal thing that I really would like to see swim lessons back. So we have too many
Yeah.
kids who can't swim and we live near a lot of water.
Yeah.
So I like
yeah.
seeing swim lessons that aren't in the lake when Habs shuts it down because the
And it's
cats
freezing cold. water no
Exactly.
matter what.
I know, exactly.
Well, they
Although
used-
it's pretty darn cold in the high school pool, I can tell you from doing the toddler program. Oh, I was wearing a wetsuit. Anyway, sorry.
I was gonna say, they used to have swim lessons at the Y.
They still do, not as
Oh.
good. I mean, I have to say, I've been through a lot of those. I had a kid who did 6 rounds of beginning swim lessons and couldn't swim. He did
Oh.
2 lessons, like just 2 lessons with Ithaca Youth Bureau and swimming.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, it was all the good Y preparation, I'm sure.
It's all about the future.
I'll ask about that.
Which
what
isn't
they-
to knock the Y, because I had another kid who swam like a fish after those lessons, so it might have been the kid, but no, they actually just had really quality swim lessons, so anyway.
So, yeah, are you done?
I'm done.
Yeah, so I just had that, I talked with the person from Rural Water, who's Steve Oakley, who's gonna be helping us with the source water protection plan that we authorized. And he's still finishing up some things with another municipality, but we'll be ready to, really start engaging with us within a couple of months. And so the task that we have now is I'm getting him some information that he needs, and he's doing some research. He'll start, but we need to form the water, just an ad hoc committee group to work on this. And so I talked to Caitlin about this a little bit, and I thought it might make sense to reach out to someone, at least one person who was on the committee that did the previous report, see if they're interested just for continuity. And then Linda Little, who's on the board meeting, had volunteered when we first talked about this, that she was interested in this and would like to be part of it. And, maybe we can try to target having somebody from the ag community and having somebody who lives in the water district and just sort of thinking about that a little bit, writing a little blurb and putting it on the website so people know that we're looking for some people who might be interested. And so I can draft that if that makes
Great.
sense as a thing to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's just an ad hoc committee, so hopefully we don't have to have like interviews with all the people. Thing like that, but I mean, if we get a huge amount of interest, maybe we do to try to figure out how to hold it down. But maybe we'll just get the right amount of interest and people who have some background or expertise or strong interest. Anyway, it's a start to put it out there and see who we get, and also target a couple of people maybe who were on it before I could just ask, or who've expressed interest.
I wondered if we could just run it the same way we did the tree advisory committee, which is CSAC actually made, if I remember correctly, made the,
Right.
the recommendations
Right,
for who served, and
Right,
we
so
just
we could-
approved it.
right, we can, yeah, someone from CSAC. So Yeah, okay, so there's just that. So I'll work on getting that to Carissa for the next.
That'd be great.
The next one, and also perhaps putting in there that, we have some openings
On CSAC.
on CSAC and we
Yeah.
could use some more folks. And so, so maybe I'll try to do a draft work for both of those things.
That'd be great. We'd
And then
appreciate that.
tomorrow, there's another webinar run by Town of Ithaca, City of Ithaca, updating that on where they are in this very complex community choice aggregation project that they're working on. And the last I knew, they were targeting information by October or so, mid-October, perhaps later, to get out to municipalities about the structure of what they're doing and how municipalities could join into it if they wanted to. So I don't know, I'll find out more about what their schedule is, and I've been going to these and following. We'll just keep up on it and give them info to the board. And, I've worked a little with Rick Garfer and Ben Carver on this idea that they are cooking out there for getting a DC fast charger station somewhere in the village of Trumansburg with money, that grant money that's out there right now, 2 different sources. And so we walked around and looked at with an electrician and a fellow from one of these companies that helps you develop a proposal, and you don't have to pay for it. If they, they build their cost into it, when we write the grants, or they write the grant actually, and if the grant fails,
They
it's
absorb
part
it.
of their business model. So I don't know if that will happen, but we're getting information from them. So we walked around with their electrician and looked at where all the lines are and where possibilities might be, and who owned the land, and everything like that. So it's a long way off still, but
So if you
then
don't run off the telephone pole or
off the
electric,
3-phase, the closer it is to it, the better, because that's a big expense. Anyway, Ben Carver and Rick Darfler are very enthusiastic about this. So I've worked with both of them on other environmental things. So I'm following for the town and bringing it to
Great. Thank you.
everybody.
Is that different than ChargePoint?
Yes.
Different company?
It's well, what it is they're sort of agnostic, if that's a reasonable word for it, for what company charger you would get. So you're not, you wouldn't be locked into any particular, you would have to have a plan, but you can choose it. They just they make the proposal, and
Is this- so is
it's
this
not
for the
based on a
village?
certain.
Are they looking for us to help?
It's not clear yet what at all, how much it would cost exactly. Like, these guys will spec this whole thing out for 2 or 3 different possible locations, and then the municipalities could look at it and see what they think. There's a lot of complications to it, but it's worth looking at. It doesn't cost anything, just a little bit of people's time. So, and then the other thing I'll just mention, but I can give the details to Carissa, is that on the CLEO, Cuba Lake Watershed Intermunicipal Organization meeting last week on Wednesday, there was a mention by the fellow whose name I can't remember now, from the health department, about an opportunity that's called the Low Income Household Water Assistance Program, where people who have trouble paying their water bills and things can get this assistance, and the state pays the money directly to the vendor. So you have to become the town needs to become a vendor, and there's an application for that. And
I filled that out.
Okay,
yeah,
so you
just
know about that?
I don't think I ever heard back.
all right, well, we can try to look further, and he also, I can dig it out, had his contact information if there were questions and things like that. So that's probably worth pursuing. And there was also a woman's name that I have from, I think, another county's health department, who was talking about a village that just became one of these vendors, and it was working great for them, for people who couldn't pay their water bill. So I meant to get you that information for that. Didn't have time, but I'll send it on to you. So that's what I have for now.
Awesome. Is there any other announcements? Okay, then I'm sorry.
So, yeah, the IO had, Liz's, they're hiring the watershed manager. I think they were interviewing today.
Yeah, I saw Liz actually today.
Yeah.
She was working at the polls, and she said that they all agreed on the person that they want to make the offer
So
to.
that's-
So they're very excited about this person and
Yeah, and
so
then they were
that's
looking also
looking
for
good.
proposals from municipalities that pay into it. So I was asking her, I said, well, since she's our rep, I said, how does that work for us? So
I think it's not, I think it's just issues that you want to see the watershed. I can get the whole email because she sent it out, but maybe you can get it. But I can send it to everybody if we want to contribute thoughts as to what we'd like to see them doing or working on. They're doing a big survey and then they're gonna compile it and go from there.
That's great.
So,
Awesome.
yeah.
yeah,
thanks.
so then I
That
was just reaching out, this is maybe for you too, because you guys were doing the pavement thing.
Oh,
So the
right.
fellow at work that was doing the
Oh, yeah.
permeable pavement, and so he said he may be able to find one group did a presentation on it, so he says he might be able to
Oh, fun.
get like a little YouTube thing or something.
Oh, that would be
that he
great.
did, so that might help you guys.
Right.
And also there was you said something about a survey.
There is a survey that we
There's a property
recently
survey.
received.
Yeah,
It
I
was
can
from
dig
this,
that out for you.
Oh,
from this
okay.
building here
Yeah,
next door
they
that
would need
changed
that,
hands,
Yeah, like 18 months ago or something like
Yeah.
that.
Right.
Yeah.
which would be helpful for you. So,
Yeah.
Right.
But
The
it's-
Because would it
property
be
lines
like-
of even where the parking lot is complicated from what I saw on
Yeah.
the map that Ben Carver sent out, no, Rick sent it out, just on whose property is where
Yeah.
with regard to these charges.
So would we be paving just
That's
our
what we're
own?
gonna have
That's
to,
all we can do.
I
so,
mean, it's all interconnected in
Yeah.
a weird way, so it's gonna require
you-
some.
You should see the.
Even
map.
negotiations,
Yeah.
yeah. Right. So, yeah, so with our first step there is to have a meeting, which I'm working on organizing. So it looks like maybe the first week in July we can do that. So
it's awesome.
hopefully progress will be made there. That would be great.
Yeah. I see. I can get that to you.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Anything
so
else?
Oh,
Right.
and then, I don't know if you guys received it, but, excuse me, the water report that Bolton Point sends out, so it's the THMs have been under control.
Yep.
So it's been looking good for.
It's working.
Yep, it
Yeah,
is
for
working.
several,
tank-
yeah, so the
that
2
solution's
tanks,
That's
the
great.
one in Ithaca by the hospital and then ours. Two, you can see them mixing, so the
Yeah.
numbers are coming up.
Yeah,
Amen.
Yep.
did
Yeah.
something good,
How many years?
really.
It sends out the email and I click on it real quick. and
Yeah.
Read down the hydrant readings and like, oh, we made it.
Yay.
Woohoo.
Yes, excellent. Okay, we can move on to approval of the minutes. Did anybody have any amendments or alterations to the regular minutes?
I
Or the-
have one small thing, which is on, I think, page 7. It says, it's right above upcoming events, and it says Ms. Marino gave updates on the following. It says spoke with trustee Darfler, so it's really trustee Carver
Oh,
and,
and Rick
and,
Darfler.
and
Right.
Ulysses Library trustee, if you want,
Okay.
Rick Darfler, yeah. But there is a trustee Darfler, so I just wanted to get that right.
Then would be very confused about his conversations
Right.
potentially.
And then on the last page, there's just, you have interest twice in that, like, last paragraph right before adjourning, so. Anyway.
Is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes of June 14th
So moved.
as amended? Second,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are moving on to privilege of the floor. Is there any, there's nobody in attendance in person, but is there anybody in attendance remotely who wishes to address the board?
No, I'm fine, thanks.
And I move to adjourn.
I'll second that. Because I waited for Mary and she didn't.
I know, I was thinking.
Okay.
What do you